can look at the screen. We're going to do Tempted and Tried. I'm off made to wander farther along. Okay, here we go. Tempted and tried, we're off made to wander. Why it should be thus all the day long, while there are others living about us, nevertheless they're in the wrong. Farther along we'll all about it. Farther along we'll understand why. Cheer up, my brother, live in the sunshine. We'll understand it all by and by. When death has come and taken our loved ones, it leaves our home so lonely and drear. Then do we wonder why others prosper, living so wicked year after year. Farther along we'll know all about it. Farther along we'll understand why. Cheer up, my brother, live in the sunshine. We'll understand it all by and by. When we see Jesus coming in glory, when he comes from his home in the sky, then we shall meet him in that right mansion. We'll understand it all by and by. Farther along we'll know all about it. Farther along we'll understand why. Cheer up, my brother, live in the sunshine. We'll understand it all by and by. All right, that's good singing. Thank you so much. Well, tonight it's somewhat of a mixed night, isn't it? We always are happy to meet together in the Lord, but it's a sad occasion as well. I was planning on bringing a lesson on the book of Jonah, on Jonah running from God, on Jonah running into God, on Jonah running with God, and on Jonah trying to run God. But we're going to save that for another time because I think it'd be more appropriate tonight. Of course, all of you are familiar with the fact that we've lost our First Lady, so to speak, Jackie Stubblefield. And we are going to turn our thoughts tonight to what the Bible has to say about the death of a saint. And I'm going to invite your attention to start with Psalm 116 and verse number 15. This is a wonderful little verse. It tells what the Lord thinks about the death of his saints. And it simply says, "Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints." He's saying, in effect, this is not something that the Lord considers cheap. This is something that is precious. This is something that is valuable to the Lord, and it's something that God doesn't just do this arbitrarily. There's reasons behind it. That song we sang, "Farther Along We'll Know All About It." And we won't understand everything that happens in this life at the time that it happens, but there will come a day when we're going to sit down and the Lord's going to explain it all to us, and we'll understand it by and by, won't we? But you know, as we consider what the Bible has to say about the death of a saint, the death of a saint is different from the death of a sinner, one that is not a saint. And when a saint dies, we read in 1 and 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 1 that we know that if our earthly house of this tabernacle, a tabernacle is a tent, isn't it? It's almost like a suit of clothes. And one of these days, we all are going to fold our tent if the Lord delays his coming. But when we fold our tent, if our earthly house of this tabernacle were dissolved, if something that is temporary ceases to be, just know that you have a building or something that's permanent. A building as compared to a tabernacle is a permanent thing, isn't it? It's a permanent structure. And we give up the temporary in order to gain the permanent. And I'm going to tell you that it's simply a continuation of life from one world to another world. There's no interruption in life. We know that if we have to fold this tabernacle, that we have a building, something permanent of God, a house not made with hands in the heaven. God has something else better for us in the heavens. Now, whenever we say we breathe our last breath, whenever they say you're brain dead, or whenever they say that you're cardio dead, and our spirit departs our body, it immediately doesn't go into some kind of a sleep type thing. There's no such thing as soul sleep in the Bible. The body sleeps. The body is pictured as being asleep. And one of these days, the Lord is going to shout, and the angel is going to shout, and those bodies are going to come to life again, aren't they? They're going to wake up. And God's going to bring our spirits with him, Jesus is, when he comes, we're told. But it's a continuation. I simply, whenever I pass one of these days, you may read that Forrest Smith is dead, but don't you believe it? Because I'll be more alive than ever. I'm simply going to be moving out of my old address and my old house down here, and I'm going to be moving up to the Father's house of many mansions. And that's what death is for a Christian. It's simply a continuation of life. What outwardly appears is that something has ceased, something has stopped, that a life is over, but that's not the end of life. It's rather the continuation of life. And that's the way the Bible looks at this. We're establishing a new contact. I've got contact with this old world, but I'm going to lose contact with this old world. And I'm going to be established in a new contact with a new world, a better world. And that's exactly what's taken place with Jackie Stubblefield. She has left this old address down here. She's left this old world. She's no longer in contact with this old world, but she's got a new contact with that new world that is yet to come. She simply just moved out of this house up to the Father's house on high. And so that's what death is in the Bible to a Christian. It's a continuation of life. It's not a cessation of life. It's not the end of something. It's the beginning of something. Now, there's no loss of personality. What are we going to be like? What does the Bible say we'll be like when we get to that wonderful place called paradise, the presence of the very Lord? Will we be different? Will we have a different kind of personality? Will we have some kind of a different kind of consciousness than we had before? Well, according to the Bible, there will be no change in personality. Now, you recall the story about a certain rich man in the book of Luke chapter 16. And this rich man, he was clothed in purple and fine linen, it says. Probably came from Neiman Marcus. And he fared sumptuously every day. Now in Arkansas speak, that means he lived high on the hog. And so there he was, but there was a certain beggar named Lazarus. Now most of these things that Jesus tells about, they're parables. They're placing something alongside something and making a comparison, but parables don't use names. I believe this is an actual event that took place that the Lord is reciting, and this certain man named Lazarus, he laid at his gate full of sores. This man was experiencing suffering. He was experiencing sorrow. It was a different story with him than it was the rich man, and desiring to be fed with the crumbs which fell from the rich man's table. But I'll tell you what, I'd rather have a crumb from the Lord Jesus Christ's table than I had to have a banquet in hell, wouldn't you? And so he says, he desired to be fed. Moreover, the dogs came and licked his sores. He was in a pretty bad way. And it came to pass that the beggar died and was carried by the angels into Abraham's bosom. Now, make a mental note of that. We'll come back to that in a little bit. The rich man also died and was buried. And in hell he lifted up his eyes, being in torments, and seeth Abraham afar off, and Lazarus in his bosom. And he cried and said, Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus, that he may dip the tip of his finger in water, and cool my tongue, for I am tormented in this flame. But Abraham said, Son, remember that thou in thy lifetime receivest thy good things, and likewise Lazarus evil things, but now he is comforted, and thou art tormented. Now I want you to notice a few things about what life is like after death, even for the person who is not a child of God, even for the person who is lost. First of all, there's no loss in his ability to feel, is there? He still had the ability to feel. Now this is talking about how it's going to be with us whenever we pass from this life and we go to yonder's world. We're still going to be able to have a sensation of feeling. We're going to be able to feel. This man, he could feel he was tormented. He still had the ability to thirst. Now I'm glad that even when I get to heaven, I'm still going to be able to enjoy eating food. Aren't you glad of that? The Bible tells me that there's going to be a tree of life growing hard by the river of life, and it's going to have 12 manner of fruit on that tree, and each one of them changes every month. It's going to have probably apples, it's going to probably have bananas, it's probably going to have chocolate covered fruit. I mean, hey, this is heaven. And so we're going to be able to drink, and we're going to be able to eat. This man didn't lose his ability to talk. I've told someone tonight that we were talking about talking, and how that he had, it was Brenda, and that she was acting as the spokesman for George. And so I said, well, let me tell you, I've got a younger daughter. She was born talking. She never quit talking. She got a degree in speech and communications, and she continues to talk. And so this man did not lose his ability to talk. He did not lose his ability to remember. There are things we probably would like to forget that we've gone through down here in this world, but we're going to carry our remembrance over there. And this man also had the ability to recognize. He recognized Abraham. He had the ability to recognize and be recognized. We'll know as we're known there in heaven. No loss in personality, no loss in consciousness. By the same token, Lazarus did not lose his ability to be comforted. He was comforted instead of being in pain. He was comforted instead of suffering. He was comforted instead of experiencing sorrow. He was comforted in that he was able to recognize and be recognized. And so he had no change in personality. He had no change. And so what does the Bible say about death for even Christians and un-Christians? There's a number of things we're going to carry over. There's going to be a continuation. I try to get across to you the point that there is not going to be a cessation. There's not going to be an interval. There's not going to be a period where your soul goes to sleep. Your soul will be more alive than ever. You'll be on high. And then there's another thing that we read about in the Bible, and that is the Bible looks at death as something that's to be considered gain. And it's not a loss. We down here that are left behind consider it to be a loss. But up there, for the person who's on the other side, it's a gain. Paul says, for me to live is Christ, in Philippians chapter 1, verse 21. For me to live is Christ, and what is to die? It is gain, isn't it? You know, it's life that's just beginning. It's not something that's of no value. It's a value. It's something that's infinitely more valuable than what we have right down here on earth. Life, according to the Bible, death, according to the Bible, is a gain. It's something that we receive a gain about. And then Paul also wrote, I'm in a strait betwixt two, having a desire to depart and to be with Christ, which is far better. Better than anything on this earth. Better than what we have now. We think that we have something now that we grasp and we hold on to, but it doesn't amount to anything at all, really, when it's in the grand scheme of things, does it? Because We have something far better over on the other side. Death is also something that is an unfettering, unbinding thing. Right now we're bound by limitations. Our bodies, they get old, they get decrepit. They limit us, don't they? I can't do the things that I could do when I was 20 years old, can you? I can't, sometimes you think you can. I thought that I could get on the chair and that I could take a fly swatter and that I could knock that wasp off of that ceiling. But I found out that I was out of control before long, and that chair went one way, and I was horizontal rather, and I hit the floor like a sack of potatoes, and I don't bounce like I used to bounce. I was just fortunate God was with me that I didn't break something, and I probably should have, being as big a fool as I was. We can't do what we used to do. We have limitations. But one of the things that is going to take place is we're going to be free from that. When Paul describes having a desire to depart, and then he says over in chapter 4, verse 6 of 2 Timothy, I'm ready to be offered, and the time of my departure is at hand. That word departure is a nautical term. It means the time of casting off the rope, the time of pulling anchor, the time of setting sail. You know, these big old ocean-going ships, they weren't designed to be moored to a dock, were they? And just sit there by a dock all this time. But they were designed to be able to be free and to be unfettered and to cast off the ropes and to pull the anchor, weigh the anchor, and to get out on the ocean and be free to sail. And Paul said that's what the Bible views death as. It's a breaking of the chains. It's a breaking of that which binds us, that which limits us. And I think one of the things that people are going to experience whenever they pass from this life to the next is they're going to be amazed at how free they feel, how unfettered that they feel. And then death in the Bible is the reuniting of ourselves with friends and with loved ones. When I read back in the Old Testament in the book of Genesis, I read that Abraham was an old man, that he lived a good old age. He was an old man full of years. That didn't mean that he just had a lot of years. He did. He lived to be how old? 175. That's pretty old, isn't it? How would you like to live to be 175? I'd hate to see what I look like at 175. I'd hate to see what I look like at 100. But nevertheless, Abraham lived, he had long years, but he was full of years. That means his life was satisfying when he looked back on it. How many people would give anything if they could look back on life and change things so that they felt satisfied when they came down to the end of it? So many people don't live like that and they don't feel that way. But this was Abraham. And it says that he was gathered to his people. Now what does that mean? He was gathered to his people. Does that mean that he was put in a cemetery, in a burying ground with all of his relatives? That's not what it means, because Abraham was put in a tomb that he bought from the children of Heth. And there wasn't anybody in there but Sarah. So it doesn't mean that. It means that he was gathered home to his people, and he was reunited to his people once again. And that's a principle of the Bible. When we pass from this life to the next, our soul, it continues to exist, and it goes to a great reunion. I would like to think that whenever I pass this life, that maybe God would give my dad the day off, and he'd be down there by the gate, and he'd be waiting for me when I come sweeping through those pearly gates. Wouldn't that be grand? Wouldn't that be great? And so that's what life is according to the Bible. It's what death is, I should say. It's a reunion. Will we know each other in heaven? One old woman says, well, I know you down here on earth, and I'm not going to be a bigger fool in heaven than I was down here on earth. Sure, we'll know each other. What does Paul say in 1 Corinthians chapter 13? He says, for now we see through a glass darkly, dimly. You know, if you didn't have a glass mirror, what would you use for a mirror? I guess you'd go look in the pond, wouldn't you? Or you'd take a piece of polished brass and you'd look in it, a piece of polished metal, and that's about as good as it'd get. And that's what they had back in those ancient days. They had something that was dim, that was just a dim outline. But he says, in the coming day, it's going to be like a perfect glass mirror that's been slicked and shined up with Windex. I mean, then we will know as we are known. He says, now we see darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall know even as I am known. We all are going to have a footprint and a fingerprint that's going to stay with us the rest of our lives, and we will be recognized. Now, I won't have the imperfections that I have now. Then I'll be a handsome dude. I won't look like I do now. But nevertheless, I will be known. Now, who in the Bible was that true of? Do you recall the story of Saul? Saul was the first king of Israel, wasn't he? And Saul didn't always live the way he ought to live. He was sort of a rebellious kind of guy. But I think there's possibly evidence that Saul did join the Lord in heaven. But he's one of those people that he leaves you guessing. Don't you hate it when people come down to the end of their life and you don't know whether they're saved or lost? The way they lived, you just don't know. But then you're hoping that they made a profession. But at any rate, this is Saul. And on one occasion, Saul was trying to contact dead Samuel. He couldn't get any communication from God. He had so lived to the point where God just wasn't talking to him anymore. He couldn't get it through the means that were available, so he went to a medium. And the Bible forbids us doing that, doesn't it? But he went to a medium, and this medium got shocked because she thought she had a demon, a familiar spirit that would imitate people. And in these seances, I wonder if that's not what goes on sometimes. There's some devils involved there that are imitating people. But when Samuel appeared, it scared her to death. This was the only time in the Bible that anyone ever came back from the dead that we're aware of. And you know what Samuel's words were to him? Why did you disquiet me? I was at rest. I was having a wonderful time. Why did you bring me back to this place? We heard the pastor preach a sermon here a couple of weeks ago, didn't we? And he was talking about John Faust. Do you remember that? And he was talking about how that John was asking not Christy, but the other one, Betty Jo. And why did you bring me back? Well, this was what Samuel's reaction was. But the point is, he recognized Samuel when he came up. And Samuel recognized him. You remember when the Lord took Peter, James, and John up on the Mount of Transfiguration? And they got up there on the Mount of Transfiguration, and suddenly Jesus was transfigured before their very eyes. He was glorified. He gave a little sample of the glory that's his that he laid aside and that he resumed whenever he ascended back to the Father. And it said that he shone like the sun. His face shone like the sun. His raiment was white as the sun. And then all of a sudden, who appeared talking with Jesus? Moses. Elijah. Now Moses represents that class of saints that went through death. God personally put Moses to sleep. And God personally buried Moses in an unmarked grave, and nobody knows where it's at. There was a dispute later on between Satan and between Michael the archangel over the body of Moses. But apparently a resurrection took place out of order, and Moses' body was resumed and assumed into heaven with his spirit. And he represents that group of saints, and here he is on the Mount of Transfiguration in his body, and he's recognizable. And then Elijah, that old man ran from Jezebel. And I tell you what, we used to be kind of hard on Elijah, but we need to back off and rethink that a little bit, because Elijah may have been smarter than we thought. When a woman gets after you, you better run. And he ran until he couldn't run anymore. And he said, Lord, I'm no better than my fathers. Take my life and let me die and sleep along with my fathers. But you know, the joke was the old man never did die, did he? And there came the point in time when he told Elisha, if you're with me and you want this double portion of my spirit, if you see me when I'm taken, then it'll come to you. And what happened? all of a sudden the heavens split open and there came a chariot, and that chariot came down, and a voice said, "Step on board," and old Elijah got on board and was whisked off to heaven, and he never did die, one of two that never died. And they were recognized. My point is, they were recognized by Peter, James, and John. And old Peter, he always had to say something. I mean, even if he said it wrong, he had to be saying something. He said, "Lord, it's good for us to be here." And he said, "Why don't we build 3 tabernacles? One for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." Dr. B.R. Lakin, the evangelist, said, who built the Cadle Tabernacle in Indiana, he said he wouldn't have said that if he'd ever built a tabernacle. Just building one of them is a headache. But at any rate, we'll know, even as we're also known. In the Bible, death for a Christian is something that refers to endless fellowship. In Matthew 8 and verse 11, Jesus said, "I say unto you that many that come from the east and the west shall sit down with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven." In the book of Revelation chapter 19, there was the voice that said, "Let us be glad and rejoice and give honor to him, for the marriage of the Lamb is come. And he and his wife hath made herself ready, and to her was granted that she should be arrayed in fine linen, clean and white. For the fine linen is the righteousness of saints. And he saith unto me, Right, blessed are they which are called unto the marriage supper of the Lamb." Life in heaven is pictured as a banquet with all the saints of all the ages. But not necessarily an endless dinner, that's not it, but endless fellowship. And we're going to fellowship forever and ever throughout the ceaseless ages of a never-ending eternity. We're going to fellowship. That's what heaven is all about. That's what death is all about, is that, excuse me, it causes us to enter into a fellowship of which it'll never be ceased. You know, I don't know how long it's going to take Jackie, but sooner or later she's going to get around to probably meeting Eve, and probably meeting Sarah, and probably meeting Rebecca. And I'm sure she's going to want to sit down and have a good long conversation with those folks. Don't you imagine so? That's what heaven's all about. That's what death is. It's the key to that. Now, the Bible depicts some first experiences. What happens before the funeral director even gets there? Whenever they're saying that you're flatlining and your spirit has left your body, what will take place in the first 5 minutes before that the undertaker ever comes? Well, I'm going to give you a few things here real quick that I think that the Bible indicates would be something that takes place. The first thing we're going to be aware of is we're going to be aware of stepping through a portal into a different dimension. And we're going to be aware of meeting, I believe, our guardian angel. How many of you believe the Bible teaches a guardian angel? Do you believe that? Well, it says, "Take heed that you despise not one of these little ones, for I say unto you that in heaven their angels do always observe the face of my Father which is in heaven." Their angels. And when she knew Peter's voice, this is Rhoda, the little damsel in Acts chapter 12, she opened not the gate for gladness, but ran in and told how Peter stood before the gate, and they said unto her, "Thou art mad." But she constantly affirmed that it was given, even so. You know, isn't that amazing? They're having a prayer meeting. They're praying for Simon Peter, that God would deliver Simon Peter out of prison, that God would deliver Peter from being killed like his brother, his friend James was killed, John's brother. And when God answered their prayer and Peter showed up at the door, they couldn't believe it. They wouldn't believe it. They said, "Oh, you're crazy. You're mad." And then they said, "It is his angel. You're just seeing his guardian angel." Psalm chapter 34 verse 7 says, "The angel of the Lord encampeth round about them that fear him and delivereth them." And then Psalm chapter 91 says, "He shall give his angels charge over thee to keep thee in all thy ways." Thank God I needed a keeper. There's been many a time that I'd been gone. I'd been out of here. But I had an angel looking over me. Billy Graham and the Billy Graham Association wrote books on that and made a lot about the guardian angels. And I think that that'll be one of the first things that we see is the angel God has assigned to help us get through life and to fulfill his plan. But then what did it say about Lazarus, the beggar? It said that when he died, what happened to him? It says that he was taken to heaven, to Abraham's bosom, by a convoy of white-winged angels, doesn't it? My latest sun is sinking past. My life is nearly run. My race is nearly run. My strongest trials now are past. My trial has not begun, but my trials are over. Oh, come, angel band. Oh, come around me stand. Oh, bear me away on your snowy wings to my immortal home. Oh, bear me away on your snowy wings to my immortal home. And when the time comes, we're going to be conscious of a convoy of angels that's going to be taking us to glory. That'll be the first thing that we're aware of, stepping through a portal that we see angels. And then the next thing is that we are going to be, we're going to have the sense of being unmoored. We talked about the departure. Paul said the time of my departure is at hand. We're going to be unmoored. We're going to be free to set sail for home. A picture of leaving this earthly body and its weaknesses and its limitations and its sufferings, and a sudden awareness of a new freedom and an unfettering. And then there's going to be a sensation of stepping into a time warp. Now, all of y'all are Star Trek fans, and you know what it's like to talk about time warp, don't you? We come from a generation that talking about space, and we're talking about time warps. What's the fastest thing in this universe that humans know anything about? The fastest thing that we know anything about is the speed of light, isn't it? And we're talking about light in a vacuum that has zero mass. And light is just one part of the electromagnetic spectrum. And so electromagnetic waves and radio waves and those kinds of microwaves, they're all part of that spectrum. If they have no mass, they travel a constant speed. What is that speed? 186,000 miles per second. That's pretty fast. That'd win any race, wouldn't it? That's really fast. Now, let me ask you something. How far away is our sun? It's 93 million miles away. That's not a light year. How far is a light year? A light year is how far light will travel in a year's time. If it's going 186,000 miles a second, how far is that? It's about 6 or 7 trillion miles, if I recall. That's a long ways. Our sun is not a light year away, but the nearest star beyond our sun is about 4 light years away. It's about 46 billion, I believe, light years to the edge of our universe. Our universe does have a boundary. It may not be a well-defined boundary, but it has a boundary. Where is heaven at? Is heaven in our universe, or is heaven outside our universe? I don't know. It's unknown, isn't it? But how long would it take us to get there in a conventional vehicle of travel? Billions and billions of years. How long will it take you to get from earth to heaven by stepping into God's time warp? 2 Corinthians chapter 5 tells us to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. One moment you're here, the next moment you're there in His presence. That's fast. I don't care where heaven is located. That is really fast. And that's what death for is for a Christian, and that's what the person who dies in the Lord can expect, to be whisked to heaven so fast at superluminary speeds. We'll be going through the planetary heavens. We'll be doing it so fast that Satan won't have a chance to snag us. You see, he's the prince of the power of the air. There's going to be a great war that's going to be fought in Revelation chapter 12 between Michael the archangel assembling the heavenly forces, and between the devil and his angels, a third of the angels that fell with him. And he's going to be defeated. But until that time, he controls those astrophysical realms, those layers. But we'll be passing through hostile territory. Won't matter. We'll be going so fast. It's going to be a sensation of traveling that fast, and it's going to be an amazing thing. And then what else? We're going to become conscious of a new environment. When we come rolling up in front of the heavenly city and the pearly gates, we're going to be seeing an environment we've never seen anything like before. I'll tell you what, these environmentalists can have their environment and all their problems that they create with it, but we're going to be going into a new environment. And the person who is, before the undertaker ever gets there, is going to be into that new environment. And they're going to be conscious of that. No discord in that environment. No lack of harmony in that environment. And then there's going to be a reunion with the people, God's people that are there, the saints, the person who dies, his people. It's going to be a time that they'll have coming between now and when the Lord returns to this earth, when you can catch up on things. You can tell stories about things. But the greatest thing is we're going to see the face of Jesus first of all, aren't we? What happened when Stephen the deacon, whenever he was stoned to death, he said he saw the heavens open. And he said, I see Jesus standing at the Father's right hand. Did you ever hear that old song? Once a man named Stephen preached about the Lord. Folks were saved and folks were healed as they heard his word. Satan did not like it. Soon he had his crowd, and as he was tried, they heard Stephen cry aloud, I see Jesus standing at the Father's right hand. I see Jesus yonder in the promised land. Work is over, now I'm coming to thee. I see Jesus standing, waiting for me. He saw the Lord. He knew he was going to be face to face with him. And when my life's work is ended and I cross the swelling tide, when that bright and glorious morning I shall see, I shall know my Redeemer when I reach the other side, for his smile will be the first to welcome me. I shall know him, as redeemed by his side I shall stand. I shall know him by the prints of the nails in his hand. And then the person who dies is going to see the saints of all the ages. And then they're going to enter into a state of eternal rest and eternal bliss. There the wicked cease from troubling, Job says, and there the wicked be at rest. And when he had opened the fifth seal, I saw under the seal in Revelation chapter 6, the souls of them that were slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, How long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the other side of the earth, or on the earth? And white robes were given unto every one of them, and it said unto them that they should rest for a little season. And I heard a voice from heaven saying unto me, Right, blessed are the dead, which die in the Lord from henceforth. Yea, saith the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, and their works do follow them. Blessed place, state of perfect bliss. These are the things that we have to look forward to as Christians. I was talking with Christy the other day, and she said, I have a little different slant on things. She termed it, now she said this, her words, I was an old hospice nurse. She's not old by any measure. But she said, I was an old hospice nurse. And she said, seeing what I saw, it was a blessed thing to see saints of God pass from this life to the next life. And that's the way God intends for us to look at it, isn't it? And I know that there's kind of a heaviness that hangs over our meeting tonight. We come here tonight and we have heavy hearts for our pastor and for his family. But we should not have heavy hearts for Jackie, should we? Because she's far better off. Paul says, I have a desire to depart and be with Christ, which is far better. And so I simply wanted to share those thoughts with you tonight. If you don't get Jonah, you don't get running with God and running into God and all that kind of stuff, you'll get that another time. So that's our lesson for tonight. We want to now look at our prayer time, and we want to remember